Welcome to the CodePlay Culture Podcast, where we discuss tech, gaming, health, and the world around us.
Alexander went over to the box and opened it. Inside was an insignia ring from his grandfather. Alexander took it. Okay, so that was bad, but we're talking about narration of video games. Like, I have certain people's voices in my head, like, Snake, if you go over here and do this thing, and he's like, yeah, Corbro, or yeah, whatever. Like, there's certain iconic, we can just get, is it whoever is the narrator from most movies, like in a
Morgan
world.
Freeman?
Yeah, Morgan Freeman does like the narration, and then the trailer guy. Like, do you ever see that funny SNL thing where it's like, imagine going on a date with the guy that does a trailer narration? He's like, would you like popcorn? And would you like extra butter? And he's like, no, like, geez, calm down. But like, yeah, narration, reading or no narration. Welcome back to CodePlay Culture Podcast, where we talk about all things gaming, tech, ideas, cultural impact on these things, mental health, physical health and wellness, and pretty much we should just rename the podcast to life. Today we're talking about narration in video games and the evolution it's taken over the many years. Joined with me, as always, luckily, and almost always, equally luckily, is our guest, Chris Kreuter. And we have Rui. Rui, how are you, dude?
I'm doing pretty good, man.
Chris, how are you?
Day.
Doing great, man.
Okay, so I'll kick it off, obviously, because I already kicked it off pretty awful. But self-love is something I'm working on. I will say I was never a really good reader, like, because reading is boring and I like video games, and maybe that's a cool way of saying that, right? I'm not sure the reason, whatever. Insert excuse here, right? There's a template for excuses. But my favorite RPG, Tales of Symphonia, Namco Bandai, post-merger, there's not a lot of voiceover. I literally, for 60, 70 hours of that game, I fell in love with reading because I loved the story, and it made me a better reader, and it helped me like have a newfound look at why you should read and the calming effects of like doing it before bed. And I realized it was really the content that was the problem, not how you absorb the content as in reading. But that's the example of no narration. So here's our show all about narration. And here's my example of like, it was pretty impactful to not have any narration.
Well, but there's a difference between narration and narrative. Right? I mean, Rui, I know you followed the topic. Maybe you want to touch on that a bit, like kind of what you wanted to tackle with this.
Yeah, no, it was more of the evolution of narration. Like for me personally, I know I love video games and I did play them a lot growing up. But when the introduction of narration, given a certain narrative, because we can use those terms together, right? That sucked me into a video game like never before. All of a sudden, I was completely just immersed in that game. I did not want to put it down, right? So I feel like that evolution of narration and character narrative throughout gaming, that evolution is what drew me in, is what continues to draw me in day by day, right? If not for that, I think I probably would have put games down forever if they were still more like those older RPGs that don't have any kind of narration, but they do have obviously narrative, story-driven narrative, right?
You have to forgive me. What is the definition of narrative? I know I'm putting on my
narrative. I mean, it's a synonym for story, right? Like, what's the
context of the story where it's
what is the story being told, right? So
let's pull up a dictionary. Hang on.
How is that story being told? Would be through narrative, through printed words on a page, through an audiobook. It might be through a board game, an RPG, right? Like there are different forms of literacy. So it's how you're reading, but what are you reading would be the narrative as opposed to the narration. I mean, that's a real broad.
Yes.
So what are some like very iconic narratives that you guys have experienced? Like I'll tell you one. Like Final Fantasy VII for me was iconic, man.
Me
That
too. It hit me at high school, so
it's hard to top that one. Yeah.
Yeah, I was kind of jealous of people like you that had PlayStation 1s, and I had to like go and like get really close with a friend, like man, his breath. Like, but I love hanging out with my friend because he's got a PlayStation 1. I'm just kidding. I'm like, that's no one from the past. So if I sat beside you playing FF7, that wasn't a thing. That was just like, whatever.
Chocobo breath or whatever.
Yeah, Chocobo. It was a Gishel grass breath. I'm like, man, that Chocobo has been choking on Bo too much lately because that bird is stanky. But
yeah, but I think for me, I mean, even the earlier games, was it Zork? The old text-based adventures and RPGs, or like the first and all the way through the latest one. I mean, for me, Tears of the Kingdom is still keeping me engaged 100 whatever hours in.
Yeah.
It kind of gets to the whole narration versus reading on the page, but
right.
There's also the limitations of when we were kids and we're playing with an 8-bit system, or even before that with games with VGA graphics. There's only so much narrative you can really
right
through, right? Where it's just basically a computerized book.
Yeah, and this is why the market has grown exponentially, right? I think it's for this reason alone. Graphics is not really a deciding factor, I think.
Well, the iconic games that stick with you are because of story, right? Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VIII. No one talks about 8 the same way they ever do about 7. You talk to anybody of our age group. 7,
that's right.
It stretched beyond the RPG boundary in a way very few games have.
Okay, so and Chris, I'm gonna like be friggin' annoyed right now if you haven't put down pom poms, Logan. But like, have you played The Last of Us for PS3, 4, 5?
No, I don't know PlayStation, so no.
Okay. So like that thing, and like, have you like seen enough to know that like, holy crap, you're missing out?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have FOMO with games because I have limited time, right? I've made a choice. I know it was available on Steam for a while back, but I'm not too active. I'm getting my daughter into gaming now, so I have a Switch. But beyond that, like I have no desire to go get other systems, and I just don't have the time or bandwidth.
Fair enough. So for that one, for people that do have limited time, like just play the first, like do a demo, do the first hour or whatever. It is the narrative or the story or like how it's set up and how it's told. It's like, oh my god, and Naughty Dog or Insomnia or whoever, they already had a like track record of, they had these commercials on PS where your girlfriend would sit beside you, watch the game because like, oh, is this a movie? This is fun. Where it's actually enjoyable for non-gamers or people that are very adverse to gaming to just sit and enjoy. It was okay. So forget about all of those zombie movies or Resident Evil or Walking Dead or
World War Z.
World War Z. It was literally like, wow, this is like compelling. These characters, like you fall in love with the characters, like how they talk, and
it's a story well told. That's why they made a Netflix or whatever show about it, right?
And that was so good. And who was in it? Who starred in it? Is like that Pablo, whatever, is like literally Mandalorian guy or like Narcos guy. Like they got huge names, and that was like the first. Like, can you imagine the studio that made that? Like, let's say we're game devs, us three. Arguably we are, right? I mean, like just in, non-graphical sense, maybe. But like, imagine we did that. We released this game. We're like, yeah, it's pretty good. We liked what we made. It was pretty good. And then Netflix comes on, or it wasn't even Netflix. I think it was someone else. But they're like, hey, we're going to make a movie. We're going to put like top stars in it. That thing is awesome. I'm like, oh, like really? Like we liked it. We thought it was like pretty game changing. Like, how hard would it be to be humble at that point? This is a like definitive piece of pop culture, like inserted in the timeline of humanity of like when games just cross that border between being not games in so many different ways. Orchestral score, emotion, like, people cry, like non-gamers cry. I'd have to imagine at certain parts of that thing. It's incredible.
That's a hard game to top, man. Like seriously, the last decade we haven't seen anything like that. It was
3 times. Like It's the same game. I'm like, just like they keep on remastering. It's not remastered.
Yeah, but it's a good story, well told, can transcend the boundaries of its original creation. I mean, that's
right.
I mean, we had the Mortal Kombat movies in the 90s. It's probably the first one from a video game perspective that I can remember.
Yeah, the bar was set very low, I guess. For
no, but the movies weren't.
The movie was
terrible.
so good, man.
I loved it. No, don't get me wrong.
The music was phenomenal. I hit that
you remember
mid-90s techno score.
Like I remember walking out of there or talking with friends. I was like, why did they decide to make his spear like a snake thing that bites you? Because in the game it wasn't like that.
But they did fan service. I mean, Johnny Cage,
incredible.
Johnny Cage punched Goro in the balls. That's what we all wanted to see, right?
Yes,
it had moments, but I think it can transcend. I think more people know about Mortal Kombat from the movies than they did playing the games. And I mean, the franchise is still going, for better or worse. But
I can't play that stuff anymore. It's just too brutal. Right.
But for me, that's the reason, like the type of story being told, right? The Last of Us, like I know about the story and everything. I know it's popular. It's just not the kind of story I like to read generally. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a certain categories of games, like anything horror. Like I know you guys are Resident Evil fans. Like I loved playing the first one on PlayStation. But I don't like that type of story normally, so I didn't really keep up with the franchise beyond the Milla Jovovich movies.
Did you like the PlayStation 1 one you said?
Well, yeah. I mean it was a revolutionary game, I think, in a lot of ways. So that's why that it was one of the few games that was so popular back then. I just played everything when I was a teenager.
There are two types of Resident Evil, right? There's the action one, then the fun one. I mean, sorry, the puzzle one.
Yeah. I love the puzzle things, right?
That first one had a GameCube remaster, and it wasn't even HD because GameCube was like 480i resolution, but it was so beautiful. I think they did actually release a fully 4K, or they're going to, but if you want to relive, that's a good one to relive. When you go into the save room and you got the ink ribbons for the typewriter and there's that calming music that comes on to let you know that everything's okay. I swear to God, this is how our dreams will predict the future, and the feeling that we interpret that is called deja vu. That's at least my philosophy on it. It feels like I have seen this somewhere, and it's probably just a miswiring or exactly correct. But I will say, in a dream I had, it was a VR or Meta 3, whatever, of Metroid 3, right? I'm in Samus's suit. Obviously, I'm a chick. It's me, right? I'm in this suit, and it was in a save room with the Resident Evil music. The floor had various tiles removed and some ooze running through it. There was cockroaches just running over cables, but it was that whole music. I'm I'm in a safe area. I'm looking around. I'm like, dude, I'm never leaving this safe area, because that would be horrendous to be like Samus and walking through in VR. I'm but man, that game just left so many impressions on me.
I feel like there needs to be a mental health counseling service for gamers. So
yes, there should be
diagnose.
Oh goodness, they'd make a killing, man.
Yeah, we'll delete that from the show, and then we'll just register a website, start a company, all this stuff. It's a pretty good idea.
Broken clocks write twice a day. But I think back to the topic of narration, though, I think versus narrative. Again, we go into a little bit rabbit hole there, but narration for me in games it really increases the drama of a game, right? Again, I'll use the more recent example of Tears of the Kingdom. Not everything is narrated with actual voices, but the high drama moments are. And that's kind of like The Last of Us. My 5-year-old daughter enjoys watching me play. I'm saving big moments for when she's there, because she wants to know what happens in the story. She can still follow it along. Yeah. But she can't read a lot of the. I'm just I can read quick. It's boom, 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 boom. Yeah. And then when they talk, she's all engaged, right? So it can add an element to games that improve both accessibility, but also they're actually talking. This is a real big moment. It gets you to kind of lean forward a bit and really engage with the story.
Right.
Seven was a lot like that too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, Logan mentioned, you asked me earlier about that game, Kingmaker or Pathfinder, right?
Pathfinder, yeah.
And that game is completely player-driven narrative, right? Every choice the player makes drives a different narrative. There are hundreds
you choose
of
your own adventures,
endings, right? Yeah. exactly. So those kind of games they really resonate with me.
Even turn-based, like, I mean, you think I think one of the nice things Civilization 5 and 6 did, with all the glitz and glamour and advanced gameplay mechanics, like they added the little the cutscene videos with the leaders and talking and introducing themselves in their own language. They put a lot of money and resources behind that. My buddy was one of the developers of the game, so I got the inside track on that. But like,
nice.
The amount of work that they had done to make sure they got like the authentic language,
right.
They went and got people like native speakers to come in and record and make sure they got it right at a huge cost, because it just added a lot of drama and realism to a game that, the narrative is just driven by the players. Like, you're either going to conquer them or you're going to lose your battle, or you're building a civilization. But those high drama moments, those epic, like I built Stonehenge or something, gets that nice cutscene video with some narration. They started reading quotes from famous people. It just added such a nice, fun element to your accomplishments or your detriments.
Yeah.
And because you're telling a story yourself.
Yeah.
I probably said this to you guys before, so I might feel like I don't have that many like anecdotes. I'm running out of like my Rolodex for anecdotes. I'm like, you need to like,
like a 2-minute monologue about like Samus and bugs on the ground. That was pretty good. That's a good anecdote. Like, there's like 10 in that one like minute.
As long as you guys got a visual from that, I'm like, fuck, it's like it hit me like that. Normally you retain memories due to like PTSD, like something bad happened, because we're like programmed to remember that so we can survive, to pass on our genetic code, so on and so forth. But I remember that because I was like, would you like to create a memory for this experience? I'm like, yeah, man, that was pretty cool. Like I stored that indefinitely. I had free will on how the retention on that memory, but getting to the narrative and the narration and, branching off from this Civ stuff, you're talking about like the Sid Meier stuff, and you're talking about the more recent one. Is it 4 or 5?
6.
Oh, I didn't
really play much. 5 was 5. I played a lot. 6 I played a lot of actually early on, but not then all the expansions and stuff. I haven't.
Oh man, I gotta play 6. So like Command and Conquer, not Red Alert. No, because that was the one that like got popular. And why did it get popular? It got popular, unfortunately, because the first one is perfect, right? It was like, the example I'm trying to get at, and it happens sometimes like, oh, have you heard this of like, no, well, that's only popular because of this, but the original, dude, if you guys played the one with the Tiberium and
Tiberium Sun?
No, Tiberium Sun is the second one, right? So like these are all,
I don't remember them.
So there's some really good examples, I think, where narrative adds a lot to the experience while you're playing. It's not just cutscenes, right? Like you use Metal Gear Solid. Like I played the heck out of that game originally, right? But think Portal 2, Halo, especially Half-Life. That there was a whole series of games there in early late 90s where like it was talking to you as you. Its function, like in a lot of senses, was world building and engagement.
Yeah,
there's a large class of games, but like Portal only works if you have the smart ass robots and the back and forth banter, right? If you don't have that backstory, BioShock, another phenomenal example where the narration could take multiple forms, right? It's not just like someone like talking to Solid Snake, or it could be like all of a sudden it's a cutscene video of this old person talking. It's a historical perspective, and then it's another character directly talking to you. It was mixed media, I guess is a better way to phrase it, right?
Like when PlayStation 5 came out and it had the speaker in it, it would like, I think it was Metal Gear Solid, I don't know, 5 or 4, whatever, the one that it was like on PS3, I don't know, whatever. Sometimes they'll actually talk to you through the controller, and like you have to put it up to your ear like it's like a phone and stuff like that. I'm not talking about Nintendo DS Yoshi Touch and Go where people are on a bus blowing into their DS, like trying to get the balloon to raise. Like, like not everything in Japan will work in North America. I'm sorry.
I think Dreamcast could have done more with that little Tamagotchi device.
Oh my God. Dreamcast, again, like ahead of its time, like people, when that thing, like it was heartbreaking. It's like, can we just mourn for a second of like for Dreamcast not surviving?
How about
Very
Sega
ahead
not
of its time.
surviving?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, okay, the guy that made Sonic or whatever, I'm blaming one guy, or not blaming, whatever. It's like he comes back to the group, shareholders are like, she's like, okay, I was gonna do some Japanese accent. I didn't want to do that. So he finally comes back, he's like, all right, I finally figured it out. This is the Sonic they've all wanted. I finally done it. I know it took 25 Sonics. They all somewhat failed. This is the one. And then it comes out, it's like, I didn't really do that well. I'm like, guys, like, stop trying to, they're trying to like chase something. And I don't even know if the world,
Money?
I mean, I don't even think that they're making
three
money
Netflix
off
specials or three Netflix shows.
Yeah.
The game still sucks for me. I hated it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm like,
you're trying to go back and like play the original Sonic. Like, it's not fun.
No, that's what I'm saying. It had this like special, like, time and a place of like, in on Sega Genesis there was blood in Mortal Kombat, and SNES or NES or what wasn't, and
but it was also just not Nintendo. It was just an alternative, right? And then PlayStation came out and spanned the market even further. I mean, I think Sega had the right idea in terms of being edgier, right? They just even the NHL hockey game, the NHL PA 93 had you hit the player and the blood comes out, and that made it into movies. Like,
I'll tell you what, though, Sonic is a little more kid friendly than Super Mario.
I don't think I could even like my daughter couldn't figure it out. Like, but I also can't process things that quickly too. I think it's also maybe just old man yelling at Sonic.
Yeah, it's like, who looks at the world like that? It's like, okay, well, for the next like 2 hours, I want you to drive insanely fast. You have your Model 3 with plaid, right? And then you just gun it. And then instead of looking forward, I want you to just look out the rear of the side of the car and just see if you can avoid traffic. Like, you can't know what's about to hit you at velocities that are, super physiological.
It's not a great design for sure.
Yeah.
But the one thing
not every game needs narration either.
Right. Not every game needs it. Yeah.
Like one of my favorite games growing up was Wipeout, the racing games.
Oh yeah.
Right? Even all the way up through the PlayStation ones. And it's like there was enough world building in there, and the music, like it was more chill. I think adding voices, and if you added a whole plot line or a real narrative, like you're immersed in a world that doesn't need a lot of narration. It really would have taken you out of the game. Like there was like a pit crew, like do this, do that.
Yeah.
Do you guys know what game I was trying to mention for that intro by any chance? It's probably just so bad. So that was King's Quest 6, sorry, King's Quest 5, where these are the Sierra games or the point and click adventure.
More than one?
Sorry?
Excuse my ignorance. They made more than one. I remember the original one.
Yes. So what like spawned from that is like, like Police Quest, Leisure Suit Larry, Dave the Tentacle. We're talking about Indiana Jones and the
the Sierra game stuff.
All that stuff. Like that was
Maniac Mansion.
Maniac Mansion. There's so many point and click like things. There's a lot of narration there. I just remember like in Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis, which is a Lucas Arts game. Oh man, I can't believe the brain produced the correct juices to recall that. And you would see like the Indiana Jones mouth, and it's like, I don't know about this artifact. It's all these like pixels.
There's a movement now. I mean, obviously, being a science fiction writer, I'm keyed into that community too, like actual books. And there's a lot of popular authors that are being contracted to write the stories and narratives for games, right? I have a good friend that wrote it's a 90,000 word book and broken out into narration over the course of the Lewis and Clark adventure, right? The game Merryweather. There was John Scalzi, more famously. He's a very prolific sci-fi writer, probably one of the top dogs in the industry right now. And Midnight Sun, he wrote the game basically, or created the world, because they have the world building and the skills, but also writing snappy dialogue and narrative. So you're seeing a lot more of not just the famous artists and developers, but also famous writers that help add more narrative oomph behind a story, and then having that name and their following associated with your story or your game.
And they can now digitize you and make you an actor in a game. So the narration can come from the real actor's voice, as well as the real actor's digital representation of the real actor, which is kind of what they did for Death Stranding for the guy from Walking Dead. What's his name? Death Stranding guy, Hideo Kojima. I don't know, but he's a real AMC Walking Dead star that he's just got a baby in a bottle strapped to his chest. And have you guys played that game?
I have not
heard of it.
So, you know, like Metal Gear Solid, right? So it went very, very well and then Konami was like, you know what? I want you to, Kojima, I want you to do a bunch of stuff that you don't want to do. And he's like, screw you. He's like Cartman, screw you guys. I'm going home. And then he makes this studio, and the stuff that he produced now is like, so like crazy. I'm like, this, if you haven't played Death Stranding, there's like a remastered one now, and it's just,
it's funny that
in the best way.
It's like a not meta game, it's the wrong term, but like it's the art of using narrative and narration of games, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a really good book by Gabriel Zevin called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Mm-hmm. That one I highly recommend. It's a great novel, but it's about the game development process and exactly what we were talking about. Like, screw you, I'm going home doing my own thing because you know the pressures of money and studios and early success, and how it and then how it informs the human elements that can then inform more narratives in different types of games, right? Like, what elements of the developer's psyche or personality come through the narration, the narrative, whatever word you want to use for it. That's also, it says the art isn't representative of the person, but I think the best stories are told from a place of knowledge and experience, right?
Right. So like their whole like, you know, their whole like, you know, how was your day is bleeding through their current expression of their creativity through that narration or narrative of like, at this point of his life, when he created this game, he was in such a place where this kind of a game was possible. And if you look at some of his games more recently, well, I guess in the case of Hideo Kojima, they're getting more weird. It's almost like once, it's that whole, you were working under a series of CEOs commanding you to do at their whim. But then once you are birthed as like entrepreneur ready, you've now crossed into the place of like, man, I get to do everything I want. And the people sometimes that come out that get birthed like him are creating the world's most beautiful art. You know, like, this guy's crazy in the best way possible. I can't think of a better word, but like without that experience of what they're going through, they would never actually produce that at that time.
I'm drawn to stories like that, though. I mean, Ready Player One probably being one of the more famous examples. Ready Player Two, I mean, from a novelization, was just as good, if not better. But like,
wait, they had a Ready Player 2?
That's really? You have it on 4K disc, or you like on?
They didn't make a movie
on Blu-ray.
It was a book.
Oh yeah. The book is better than the movie.
I will bring it. I'll bring it with me when I see you guys
Nice.
in a couple of days. I have a copy of the physical book.
Amazing.
Yeah,
I'm going to take a photo of every page very slowly, and you guys can wait. It's worth it.
It's in my donate pile, so I'll donate it to you.
Yeah.
Or Ernest Klein. There's certain authors that are just immersed in that video game world, informed by it in large part. They have all the Easter eggs, but they're also trying to tell a narrative. And I'm drawn to those sort of stories. That it's the art of making games, because I've dabbled in the game design world, the writing world, science fiction in general. It's a cool theme. There's a long tradition of that as well.
All right, I guess that's it. We're at time. With that, I want to hit pause on our gaming narrative journey. From text adventures to cinematic masterpieces, we've played through the evolution of storytelling games. Remember, I'm reading this off a prompt. I'm sorry. I'm going to have to edit this out.
remember.
Alexander and his signet ring again.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. All right, everybody, we're at time. Logan, any last words?
Yeah, keep on gaming on.
Awesome. Chris, thank you so much for being here. Anything you want to add to this conversation before we depart on our journey?
3 more hours? No, I'm good. It's awesome topic. We got to revisit it.
Yeah, we'll definitely revisit this, and we will be back next episode. Thank you all for being here. Goodbye.